Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. Let me just start here with the presentation. Great. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday from wherever you're watching or whenever you're watching, because this is going to be available on YouTube afterwards. My name is Lucas. I am the founder of the Latin American Tax Policy Forum, and I am joined today by a panel of esteemed panelists who were invited because of their academic as well as professional experience in their respective countries. And I am very thankful for having them with us today. I'm going to share a quick presentation about the forum before we get things started with the webinar. And of course, later I'm going to introduce each panelist in the order they will be speaking. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully you will all be able to see it. I suppose you're able to see my screen now. I'm going to switch to presentation mode. Okay. So if you're not familiar with LATPF, and I hope you are, but if you're not familiar with the Latin American Tax Policy Forum, it was founded in October 2021 as a think tank. It later evolved into a platform that curates and produces Latin American tax policy content. Our mission is to give visibility to local researchers, as well as to facilitate the exchange of ideas between academics and practitioners in the region. We hope this contributes to the formation of a united front in Latin tax policy so that we import less from other countries or the OECD and produce solutions of our own. If you want to support LATPF, we invite you to join as a member. In addition to our posts, which help us give visibility to LATAM journals, articles, and events, we offer members two key benefits: access to our monthly reports, as well as to our curated section. Our reports explore key issues affecting Latin American tax policy in different areas. June's report, for example, was focused on payment processing companies, and the May report focused on the reinsurance industry and its placement in Latin American tax treaties. Our curated section recommends nearly 3,000 tax-related articles from Latin American tax journals. It is a curated repository of links to recent publications from all the countries represented in the panel, as well as other countries in Latin America: Mexico, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, even Cuba. We have articles from many other countries. And the purpose of this section is to serve as a search engine for our members who have the opportunity to do research on Latin American content written by Latin American authors. As many of you know, most of these articles are not read, and if they're read, they're not cited. And if they're cited, they're not cited outside of their countries. So that's what we hope to change. And essentially, you get access to that. You also get access to, as a member, our private WhatsApp group for members. So an opportunity for you to exchange ideas with other members of the LATPF community. And how do you join? Very simple. You can sign up for either of the plans that we have. We have a monthly or annual plan for individual members, and the monthly or annual plan gives access to the reports in the curated section. And we also have a monthly or annual plan for institutional members, which gives access to those sections of the website as well. And also, if you have access to, if you subscribe for 3 access credentials, you get to show your logo and link on our homepage. So we have 2 institutional members today. One of them, Unbekannte Farbe, and also we have Cortés del Rio. Those have believed in our product, supported us, and we are very thankful to them for having believed in our mission and helped us push this forward. If you wish to join as an individual member, just go to latpf.org/membership. And if you wish to join as an institutional member, this could be a law firm, an accounting firm, a university, a company, you can send an email to latpf@latpf.org. Now, For today's business, we're going to get to today's first webinar of LATPF, and the topic we'll be discussing is tax incentives for the renewable energy sector, which is a very hot topic in the region. Renewables account for roughly 69% of the electricity generation in Latin America and the Caribbean, and they also account for a total investment in clean energy in the region of about $70 billion. I think that's enough money to warrant a webinar specifically focused on tax incentives for that sector, and that's why we chose to talk about it in this occasion. Our panelists are colleagues that I've known for some time, and they are references of mine in their respective countries, as well as on tax policy and international tax themes. And I'm going to introduce them in order. We have Roberto Ramos Obando from the Max Planck Institute, who will be speaking about Honduras. We have Tomás Jorge Gutiérrez from Unbekannte Farbe and Trading SAS, who will be speaking about Argentina. We have Daniela Rivas from the Consejo de Estado de Colombia, who will be speaking about Colombia. And we also have Alberto Carbonar from the Grupo de Estudos sobre Política Tributária, or Tax Policy Study Group, GEPT, who will be speaking about Brazil. So without further ado, Roberto, thank you for your availability. And to start off with Honduras, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Give me a second to share my screen. I believe it can be seen now. Well, first of all, I thank Lucas, I thank Jessica, Jess, for the invitation and the organization. I'm very honored to be here. And yes, today, as mentioned by Lucas, I'm presenting about the tax incentives for the renewable energy sector in Honduras, and I'm giving an overview. Yes, so I will stick down, and I sorry if I speak a little bit fast. I just drank a coffee, so let me know if it's a bit faster than usual. I'm a little bit hyped. So, as an overview, on the energy sector in Honduras, Honduras relies heavily on renewable power. There's an original aim in some of our government vision plans for 2038 that it aims to cut fossil fuel generation to just 20% of the mix of the generation of power or energy in the country. However, as you may see in some of the reports, and this is a report of the year 2024, and it was published actually this year, of the National Electric Company called ENE. It shows the metrics of power generation in the country, and it shows how is the division of generation of power right now in the year 2024. And you may see that renewable energy, it addresses more than 52% of the whole lot of generation of power. So that means this aim of making renewable energy actually the most important is already it's already something that is going on, and you can see also the division on for each type of renewable energy on the graph at the in the left. So about the legal framework, there's two main laws, let's say, on renewable energy in Honduras. One, it's the Renewable Energy Law. It's Decree 70/2007, and it has been modified many times. The most important modification is the one in 2013 on Decree 138. And this law declares renewable generation of energy as a public interest, and it provides broad fiscal breaks that I will show later on exemptions of income tax, VAT, and other taxes to promote these new projects. The second law, which is the most important, is the electricity industry law. It's from Decree 404/2013, and it contains the general electricity industry law. And this has been reformed many times in 2020, 2022 are the latest reforms. And this law is the one that governs PPAs, purchase power agreements, or power purchase agreements, sorry. So what they do regarding renewable energy in this second law is that they keep tax incentives subordinated to the renewable energy law. So when talking about the tax incentives in the renewable energy sector, you go to the renewable energy law, but this is kind of like confirmed, let's say, in the electricity industry law. So if you want to look at the stakeholders around the renewable energy sector, it can be divided in the way that it's shown right now on the screen. And what I did in the table is put the stakeholder, the type of exemptions, the scope and details, and the duration. So I'm gonna tackle that little by little. When you look at the project developers, the ones that are developing the redundancy, that ones that are actually developing the project, the big companies on renewable energy, they have many exemptions. They have exemptions in VAT and sales tax, import duties and customs, income tax, withholding tax exemptions, financial services exemption, and they also have a mechanism of refund and reimbursement on their help or to help them. Regarding the sales tax, well, every or each one of these exemptions have specificity, let's say, on how to be obtained. And for example, with the VAT, it's for equipment, materials, spare parts, services, and construction tools that are directly used in the renewable energy infrastructure. It expires until the contract and license, similar to the import duties and customs exemption. With the income tax and related exemptions, those are, for example, ganancia capital, which is capital gains, and other derivatives of income tax. There is a 10-year exemption that is ongoing. The only thing, and this is kind of like a parenthesis, that in the law, it's 10 years. However, in the law, it mentions 120 months. So this has caused a little bit of issues at the interpretation of when does it start during the fiscal year or not, the exemption. And yeah, this is a matter of another talk maybe, or maybe for the Q&As. Regarding the financial services tax exemptions and also withholding tax exemptions, they are on payments. For example, on payments for foreign technical services. Yes, for foreign in the case of financial services, when these companies receive some type of a loan or financial help from bilateral or multilateral development institutions, then the repayments of this interest are also exempt. Regarding, for example, contractors that also include local and foreign, when the project developers hire contractors, as I mentioned, doesn't matter if they're local or foreign, when they are engaged in the project activities, so and in the design, the construction, or the operations of the project, they have also an extension of the exemption on VAT and import duties. And it is kind of linked, let's say, to the developers and contract license and period. Regarding, for example, foreign financial partners, this is actually really interesting because there's an income and withholding tax exemption on foreign financial partners, and it's an exemption on interest, commissions, dividends, and any profit sharing from renewable projects. But it has a limitation that it's this withholding tax exemption on this type of payments. However, they are linked to the already signed PPA contracts with the National Electricity Company, but only if it's applied as long as the PPAs were signed before Decree 138 2013, which is one of one of the reforms of the main renewable energy law. Lastly, as a stakeholder, you have also the solar energy suppliers, and these are separate companies that they provide equipment using solar energy projects, thermal systems, and as long as they supply this type of equipment or materials for these projects specifically, they can have this VAT and import tax exemption as long as they are registered in an official supplier registry in the Secretaría de Energía, which is the Ministry of Energy, in a special registry, as I mentioned. And it's an ongoing type of exemption. So I was asked to give a practical example on this, so I will just put something really straightforward. There's this project developer, company A. It develops a 5 megawatt solar photovoltaic plant in 2025. So it's after, of course, the 2013 PPA. This one, yeah, sorry, this limitation that is put, for example, in the foreign financial partners exemption. So this company signs a PPA with NE mid 2025, sources equipment from a supplier registered with the Ministry of Energy, and the total project costs 7 million. It's distributed between imported equipment and local services, and the company applies properly for all available tax benefits. I make this comment because, for example, to apply for the exemption on income tax and VAT, you have to ask to the Ministry of Finance yearly resolutions for exemptions. So that's why I mentioned that you need to apply properly for them. Uh, so when you look at the project, and this is oversimplified, but it's just to give a bit of a sketch. If you see the categories of the items, you have, for example, imported equipment on 5 million. You have VAT and import duties; those are exempt. There's estimated saving on 1,320,000. Same goes, for example, with the hiring of local construction services. If it's 2 million of VAT that you're paying on that, also exempt. 300,000 will be the estimated saving. Let's say, hypothetically, of course, that the corporate income for 10 years, it's 500,000 and it's stable during these whole years. And you have this income tax and solidarity tax on it, which is 25 plus 5% of calculated on over that base. Over 10 years, you have 1,500,000 of estimated savings. Same with the foreign technical services. If you pay $100,000 on that, you are exempt from withholding tax. Then you have a 25,000%. And on the VAT refund, what happens is that sometimes the asking for a resolution at the Ministry of Finance takes some time. So sometimes you ask for a VAT resolution, it doesn't come out on time because they have a administrative burden there. So you paid for the VAT, but then you have the right to ask for the refund because yes, you were exempt by law, but you didn't have that you didn't have the formal obligation completed. So then you get a refund of $50,000. In the end, it's more than 3 million in savings, and yeah, of course, this is something that requires many of formal obligations to be addressed, as I mentioned before. About tax policy or government policy trends, this is pretty interesting, and this is a lot of I tackle this a lot in my line of work. I divided it in three parts. First, on the audit and review section, if you want to look at the government policy trends that have been changing since 2021, 2022, rather than expanding these incentives, the Xiomara Castro's administration has tightened oversight on this type of sector. And there's a decree, Decree 46, 2022. I believe it has a long name, but it's the Decree on Electricity as a Human Right. It sets up an audit commission to scrutinize companies in the energy sector's accounts. So what they did in this decree is that they actually created this commission made up by auditors from the Ministry of Finance and the tax administration to check all of the accounts of these type of companies, not only of the renewable energy sector, but other power generators, because there is this how can I say it? There is this opinion on the government that there's a lot of tax fraud or abuse of this type of incentives. So it was a commission being called. I was actually in the government when when this started to happen, but to this day, I don't know what were the final resolutions of this type of revisions, because as to my knowledge today, none of the incentives were actually canceled by the government. So, well, then you have the tax justice law that since 2023, and I have written a lot about this, the government has proposed this new law to get out all of these abusive tax incentives. And actually, Article 15 of the draft of this law explicitly calls for the revocation of the 2007 Renewable Energy Law incentives. So in other words, the existing renewable tax breaks will no longer apply to future projects if the law enters into force as it is. However, as I have written many times, tax reform in Honduras is so difficult that this has been in debate for almost 3 years already, and it's not going somewhere. Especially if you look at the news from yesterday, that they fight a lot in on the Congress, and yeah, I don't think there's a space right now for a tax reform in this way. And finally, on the regulation of exonerations, it's let's say the proper word in Spanish on the type of exemptions that these companies have. There's an agreement or acuerdo, 143/2025. It's from this year actually, and it introduced stricter and clearer verification procedures. It empowers in some way tax authorities to audit exonerated beneficiaries and even cancel their tax breaks if commitments are unmet, or if there's some abuse of tax incentives being detected. However, I will say that this agreement is more of an administrative procedure that is actually applied. It's an administrative procedure that was created just to adapt what's already on the fiscal code, on the Código Tributario. And I believe personally that companies should not have something to worry about this matter. Because why? Because these companies that are in the renewable sector, they are still able to challenge any resolutions that revoke their tax exonerations or exemptions uh, based on the tax code. And this, which will suspend the enforcement of such decisions until a final and binding solution or court ruling is issued. So even if the government addresses this type of administrative procedure, it's a little bit of a matter of trying to make companies afraid that, oh, we are activating this procedure to verify you, but it's actually just an adaptation, as I mentioned, of what it is already in the tax code, and you can always appeal on that. So yeah, on that, I hope I was on time, and yeah, that was it from my side. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberto. If you can stop sharing your screen, but very interesting. Also interesting from the perspective of a relatively small country in terms of territory, which is a country that has offered what I would call some aggressive tax incentives compared to other countries like exemption from withholding taxes and so on, but also a country that has undergone recent political changes and a change in parties in power and how that reflects in terms of anti-abuse legislation and stricter procedures for applications for the incentives. Very, very interesting and an interesting reference point for us to use in comparison with other countries in the region, I'm sure. So now, without further ado, let's switch to Tomas, who will be speaking to us about Argentina. The floor is yours, Tomas.
Thank you, Lucas, Andres, and everyone at LATPF. Great to be here, so thank you for that. The screen is sharing, right? It's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the tax incentives for the renewable energy sector in Argentina, and as we will see, the situation is rather chaotic in Argentina. The current situation, we have federal, normally called national, incentives and regimes, and we have provincial ones, normally not in sync. They may actually work against each other. So that's one thing to consider. And we also have several regimes in the federal area where they may be complementary or they may actually exclude one from the other. We have specific regimes for renewable sources or renewable energies. And we have, for instance, what is called RIGI or RIGI. That's an incentives regime for large investment. If you want to invest $200 million in Argentina, you get a lot of tax breaks in general. So that would also be applicable, but there's no, for instance, explanation or direction or any rule on how one would apply if you, for instance, apply that investment to renewable energies. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing in Argentina is the energy sector is very heavily regulated, highly subsidized, especially when it comes to the distribution of energy, but also the production of energy. So it's for the regular consumer, it's really cheap. Energy is really cheap. So that's one thing to consider when trying to invest in Argentina currently. And you get a lot of likely on account of the highly regulated environment, you need to get a lot of approvals to make an investment that would receive any subsidy or any incentive in Argentina. So that's one thing to consider when you are planning to make an investment in Argentina. It normally takes a lot of time for it to actually be in place and applicable. Regarding renewable energy, we have one law, actually, it's the 26-190 from 2006, and this was updated or reformed in 2015 by law 191. And these laws create the national regime for the promotion of the production of energy from renewable sources and a fiduciary fund for renewable energies. And the law says the first law was created in a very specific political environment, and the upgrade or the reform is pretty much in the same government or the same idea, and the objectives have sort of been followed by the subsequent administrations. The main goal of this law or regime was to create an incentive for the use of renewable sources for the production of energy and development of related technologies. And this was declared as of national interest. The part of development of related technologies should be applicable. In practice, it has been more or less left out, but it's applicable. And as of 2015, with the new law, the 27-191, the goal was or is for December 2025 to have as much as 20% of the energy produced in Argentina to come from renewable sources. The problem with that is that one thing is the energy produced and the other one is the energy consumed. As we will see, there is another issue in Argentina where you have the production of energy that may not be able to, you may produce the energy, but you may not be able to put it into market, to transport it, because the distributors are a different sort of company, they have a different regime, and they have to have an agreement that may or may not be in place. So a lot of energy can be produced, but it may not be available for the market. Article 4 will set different definitions on what is to be understood as development, as renewable energy sources, and what would be considered equipment linked to the production of this energy. Nothing particularly interesting to point out here. It's sort of standard definitions. And when it comes to but the one thing to consider, and this is really important, is that the law focuses on the production of energy, but it says nothing about the distribution of energy. And one of the problems is you will see that the production of energy, especially when it comes to renewable sources, is normally remotely located. So, and in those places, you normally don't have great distributors of energy, or the infrastructure or the network is not as developed. So it can happen that you have a project that's producing energy or would be able to produce the energy, but it would not be able to distribute it to the consumers. So yes, you got the exceptions, the exemption, you got the incentives and everything, and you could be producing the energy, but you may not be able to sell it on account of the distributors not being able to provide you with a network to do so. So again, another thing to consider in Argentina. Regarding the benefits, remember this is a law that's been in place for more than 20 years, or actually almost 20 years. So some of the original incentives included in the first law, and the second one too, have already run out. For instance, the import duties, those were in principle exempt. Anything that was related to the production of energy was to be exempt from import duties. that ran out on December 2017. And regarding VAT, there are two things that are still in place. The first one is the transferable tax bond regarding whatever if for the production of energy you incorporate at least 60% of national components, you would get 20% of that national component value as a tax credit regarding applicable to VAT that would be transferable to third parties. And also regarding VAT, if you paid input VAT on account of or during the process of the energy production, you are able to get a reimbursement or a refund of that input VAT paid during the development of infrastructure and the acquisition of capital goods required for the generation of that energy. When it comes to income tax, you have three main incentives. The first one is the accelerated depreciation and amortization of assets and material or immaterial assets related to the production of energy. The possibility of deducting net foreign currency exchange losses without restrictions that would normally be applicable for financial interest, and the net operating losses can be carried forward for 10 years rather than the original 5. So then it comes down to whether this works or not. And the truth is that at least it works partially in the best of cases. As I said, most of the authorities regarding this regime are in Buenos Aires, and it's very bureaucratic process. And most of the companies or projects that would result in the production of renewable energies are not located in Buenos Aires, are located very far from there. So it can be very expensive if you start with the project and then you have to get the approval, because you would have to get someone to work for you on the city of Buenos Aires rather than being able to make the filings locally. And you also need to get approval at least by what is now the Secretary of Energy. And again, it's a very long process and it can be very chaotic. As I said before too, the energy is rather cheap, so you would get a lot of breaks for when it comes to VAT or income tax, but you may not be able to get as much profit as you would in other countries. Normally, a 4-people house or home of four would pay maybe $10 to $20 per month. It's not unusual, that amount. It can be obviously higher depending on the consumption, but that's a fairly standard price. And a lot of that price actually goes to the distributor and not the producer. And the distributor is the one that holds most of the power in this sort of industry. And so the producer gets stuck with the prices that normally the distributor would apply or not. So because the electric grid would depend on the distributor and not the producer would only be hooked to the grid and be able to sell the energy if the distributor agrees with him to do that. And in order to do that, you need to get a price that would work for the distributor. So you need to get those two things, the private part with the distributor working, and you also have to get all the approvals from the government. Regarding future developments, the new administration in place is working on a profound and very broad tax reform. It should be presented to the Congress on December 2025 or before that. And some of the objectives that have already been declared for this are to simplify the complexity of the current tax regime, lower the rates, broaden the base, and eliminate exemptions and distortions. As mentioned before, if by the previous panelist, the current government also see this regime as an exception that has not turned out as effective as it was supposed to. And the Working Party has, on this reform, has identified that again that the incentives in place were not as effective and have not really created an opportunity for the development of the Argentine market, and that the incentives are in the wrong place. I mean, the producers are great, and it should be that they get some incentive, but the market is controlled by the distributors and not the producer. So the idea would be to eliminate probably this whole regime and to replace it by something else, more general in scope, where the cost of how much this cost to the state and to the taxpayers would be easily identifiable rather than mixed in somewhere that cannot be really quantified. Despite that, the RIGI regime, the incentive regime for the large investment, will remain in place. But should the tax rates be reduced, those rates would be applicable rather than the ones for the RIGI. One thing that I have not been able to do is the example of how much this would save or cost because of the structure of this, how this is done. It's really, really difficult to do so. And it would really depend on each structure of how this is done and each project. So that's why I don't really have numbers for it. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tomas, for this very illuminating presentation. And I start to notice a very interesting trend here in terms of the role of government discretion in giving those incentives to people and the role of authorizations in allowing those companies to enjoy those benefits. That's something that is perhaps not perhaps expected by many investors, or maybe they have the same experience in their capital exporting countries. But regardless, very, very interesting presentations so far. Now we move to Colombia, and we're going to switch to Daniela, who I would like to thank again for having accepted the invitation to join our panel. Daniela, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will share also a presentation. And as Lucas said, I work at Colombia Supreme Tax Court. So I always have to say in my presentations that I'm here as my own, under my own opinion, and this is not an opinion of the tax court in Colombia. And you will see that in any case, we haven't seen any cases regarding these tax incentives because some of them are so new. So far, there's not been any lawsuit filed against this kind of incentives or has been assessed by the tax authority. So it's just to make this, to start with this. We'll share something. Let me
just see if I can see the screen. I can see your screen, Daniela. I know is Tomas still sharing his screen, Tomas? I don't think you are, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm double, but it's Daniela's audio.
Okay. I can see the screen on Zoom, Daniela. You can go on. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So tax incentives in Colombia were introduced about 11 years ago with law 1715. This law defined what is non-conventional renewable energy sources. And in general terms, is renewable energy sources available worldwide that are environmentally sustainable, but are not widely used. Or not extensively marketed in the sector. Currently, this includes, but is not limited to, biomass, hydrogen, geothermal, solar, wind, ocean energy, energy from waste, also small hydroelectric plants, but other sources can be like approved or determined by the mining and energy planning unit. This you are going to hear me speaking a lot about this mining and energy planning unit that we call in Spanish UPME, is the acronym, and we are going to talk a lot about that because that is the state entity that review the projects that will be granted with the tax benefits. The UBME, or the Mining and Energy Planning Unit, it's a technical institute for energy. So they review the projects for all the technical aspects. They don't, they just say to the one applying to the benefits that they comply with the technical aspects to be granted by the tax incentives. Of course, they don't say anything about how to apply the tax incentives, but the technical issues to be granted with the benefits are reviewed by them, and then if the outcome is favorable, you will start to applying the incentives. In terms of a legal framework, here I'm just showing you guys what what matter most for purpose of the tax incentives. I'm saying this because we have a lot of other decrees and mostly resolutions or circulares from the UBME about technical issues, but those, the one that you are seeing, the laws, decrees, and resolutions are the one related with the tax incentives. Since 2014, the law has been amended many times, the tax benefits and all the law about non-conventional renewable energy sources. Mostly, they were trying to facilitate the process to apply to the projects, because there were many issues that were not say by the initial law, or there were many issues in the procedures to apply that were really complicated at first. The government has been trying to simplify the process. So this is just to give you the main legal framework. Here, before starting, I would like to say that in terms of generation of electric generation of power in Colombia, 66% is generated by hydro power, because Colombia it's a country of a lot of water resources. So main projects are hydros. And there is another 30% of thermal, and just 4% it's is generated by non-conventional renewable energy sources, mainly windy or solar. But the idea that has the government is that to increase, of course, that. As I was mentioned to you, the law has changed many times because they have to simplify the process. So, for example, there was a decree in 2020 that modify or all the procedure and the requirements to be more precise about what the laws was requiring. And there's a lot of changes also because there has been like 4 main issues regarding, or challenge regarding, how to apply these things. One is that if you are investing in a big scale projects, most of most of where the sources are, for example, wind or or solar power, are placed in places of Colombia that has ethnic communities. So you might have to request a prior consultation of that community to let you invest in that area and to develop the big scale project. Also, you have to account for many environmental licenses. And one of the big concerns of problems about this policy of non-conventional renewable energy sources is that the idea is the energy that is generated has to be interconnected to the main distribution of energy. But the interconnection procedure has not been really clear. They have been trying to modify it since 2020, and it hasn't been really easy because the domestic law enables like a vertical integration between generation, distribution, and retailing of energy. So what usually happens is that the green owner might have an incentive to obstruct access of the new sources energy, because as you say, big groups are already have already developed mostly hydropower sources. So that's a regulatory concerns. But in terms of taxes and the benefits, there's a special deduction in income tax, which is mainly that those that the taxpayers that that incur in new expenditures regarding research, development, and investment to produce and utilize energy generated from non-conventional energy sources, or develop projects to produce that kind of energy, are allowed to deduct 50% of the total investment over a period and not exceeding 15 years, starting from the taxable year in which the investment start. I mean, with the operations start. So that's the super deduction or a special deduction. Another benefits is that you might have an accelerated tax depreciation or also amortization. So the machinery, the equipment, the civil works necessary for the pre-investment phase are also the investment, and the operation could be accelerated in a fastest way. Usually that kind of investment has a period to be depreciation about 10 to 20 years, depending of the kind of the asset. But here you can apply a rate up to 33.33% per year. So what you are doing is that in a 3-year period, you are depreciating assets that will take longer for tax purposes if you're a regular taxpayer. For this accelerated tax depreciation, I know it's supposed to be a tax incentive, but really, you're just generated a temporary difference for purpose of deferred tax, income tax. So not everybody sees this as an incentive, maybe just as a like a help mostly for pre-investment and investment stage, like for the cash flow, but not really like a full incentive. Regarding the special deduction in income tax, I forgot to mention that other issue around that is that benefit, it's only applicable by the entity that is developing the project. So that might that might affect the shareholders of the project when you are distributing dividends, because in Colombia, how dividends are taxed depends on if you are distributing dividends out of profits that already pay taxes at the company level. So if you have this special deduction in income tax, that profit might not have pay income tax at the company level. So when you're distributing to the shareholder, this benefit will not be a benefit, sorry to say again, but will not be a benefit for the shareholder, because the shareholder will have to pay over that dividend 35% income tax. So although that it's great for the project itself, not necessary for the investors. And the other incentives are a VAT exemption. So in the acquisition of goods and services for the development of the project, of the natural non-conventional energy source. So basically, basically, when in Colombia, when we are imported good or services, we are paying VAT over that. That kind of VAT, because it's usually for it is not for inventory, but it's for your main assets. So that kind of VAT cannot be deducted in the scheme of as a VAT output. So this is a benefit if you don't have to pay in when import this kind of goods. You really have there like a cash flow benefit, and also if you ended distributing or selling or interconnecting the energy that you produce, energy is also exempted from VAT. So that helps the whole structure of the VAT of the energy sector. So for me, this is a kind of good incentive. And I will say the last one is a custom relief when you import machinery, equipment, materials, and supplies that are not produced in Colombia, and you are only available if you import them. You are exempted from paying duties or the tariff charge when importing to the country. So that's the main four benefits. I will say that as the framework has been here for 11 years, we already have 3 different presidents since the first law was enacted. Those presidents were from different parties, left and right parties, and what the government has done yet is only like improving all the aspects concerning the development of the non-conventional energy sources and improving how you apply for the benefits. So I guess that, or maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I don't see if we will have another change in 1 year of presidents, but I don't see that the president or the government, neither the Congress, would like to change this kind of law and benefits. As I was mentioned, just to mention, and it's related with Lucas' comment, how you get the benefits is that you have to apply at, before the UBME to show that your project fulfill any requirement that is in the law. There are specific requirements for blue hydrogen projects, and then there's the other requirements. Specific requirements are for general electric generation projects that are from non-conventional sources. The UBME, as I was mentioned to you, like running a period of 85 days might take you the process. You will get like the final outcome, and if the outcome is positive, you could start the project and apply the tax benefits. One of the challenge that we are seeing so far is that the tax authority, that in Colombia is called DIAN, sometimes when they're trying to make like tax assessments to these kind of entities or these kind of projects, they're reviewing again the requirements. And I will say that UBME is the entity that I already said that technical requirements are fulfilled, and you are able to access to the tax incentives. So the tax authority should focus on if you're doing it the right way, applying the tax incentives, instead of reviewing again the requirements. Because I mean, I don't see, that's not part of the tax challenge process according to the law. But
Daniela, just apologies, just because of the time. Just if you're able to conclude, and then we're able to speak to pass
I will
to
conclude
Alberto.
right away.
Yes.
Yeah, the thing is that what I foresee for the future is that Colombia will still develop more tax incentives, or will like improve these ones, because the country recently enacted like a roadmap in terms of how to like go green in terms of energy sources. So that's how I see. Thank you, Lucas.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Daniela. And very interesting comments from Colombia as well. Again, with the whole government discretion thing, again, with the whole limited tax benefits, as well as the political scenario behind them. That's all very interesting for players in this sector. I mean, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, if you have a company, or if you're a part of a company that is interested in investing in Latin America, understanding the political landscape behind those decisions is very important for planning purposes, because at least you know a little bit of the history of those incentives, and you know how possibly they're going to play out considering institutional obstacles and so on. Finally, Alberto, I would like to pass the floor and the microphone to you. You're going to be talking about Brazil. It is a pleasure to have you here. I've been a panelist in some events of your study group of GEPT, and it's a pleasure to have you here at LATPF as well. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucas. And first of all, I truly want to thank you because, in my opinion, you are one of the best tax professionals in Brazil, and the LATPF is an incredible project. So it's so inspiring, I would say, to see how the project is evolving. So congratulations for conducting this event, this webinar, to putting together all these professionals, these academics here to discuss this relevant issue. So I will share my screen just to begin the presentation. And Lucas, please let me know if I'm exceeding my time. I will try my best to follow the time here, the 10 minutes limit. So let me see if I'm sharing the screen just a second. I think it will go now. Yeah. So one relevant point that I want to mention here just to begin is that basically, how can I say, Brazil nowadays is a key
Just
player.
Alberto, I'm seeing instead of the
Another
presentation, I'm
another
seeing your
screen,
PDF.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, okay.
Sorry, let me
No, no,
just.
fine. I just wanted to let you know.
No, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Here. Well, what is relevant to mention is that Brazil is a global leader in energy transition. Why is that? Because nowadays, something like 80% of all electricity generated in Brazil comes from renewables. So, something also around 60% of the energy generated in Brazil come from the hydroelectric power plants, and another 20% come from the wind and solar energy. So, I think it's Brazil is not a regional leader in this issue. It's also a global leader. So this is relevant to mention. And obviously, Brazil have a very complex tax incentives regimes for this sector. But the current regime allows direct investments from abroad to Brazil. It allows cost reduction. I must say it is not perfect, but I would say that in some ways it could be it is a good regime at the end of the day. Okay, and why is that? Because you have several tax incentives in all levels of government. I'm saying that because Brazil have this multi-level approach considering federal, state, and municipal incentives that we're going to see here today during the presentation. So what are the main incentives that Brazil has? In at federal level, we could mention the PIS and COFINS, which is two social contributions that Brazil has. They are going to be extinguished with the tax reform that is already occurring. But right now we have a zero rate of PIS COFINS to wind components, and we also have considering these two social contributions, we have several suspensions of collection of these taxes. So we have the PADIS, which is the program for the support of technological development of semiconductor industry for solar energy. Specifically, we also have RADI, which is a special incentive regime for infrastructure development. We also have REPENEC, which is a special incentive regime for renewable energy generation. Somehow I see the presentations before me somehow have some similar, I would say, incentives. Now, so you can see this trend around Latin America in this kind of tax incentive. Another federal tax incentive that Brazil has is the accelerated depreciation on the corporate income tax, and also at the social contribution on net profit. Uh, at state level, we could say that we have some regulations that establish, how can I say, exemptions for equipments, for distributed generation. So we have the ICMS, which is the state value added tax in Brazil. This tax is also being extinguished by the tax reform. So we have these two specific regulations, Convênio 101 97, 100 and 197, and the Convênio 16 of 2015, which is regulated by the National Electric Energy Agency in Brazil. The second one is very relevant for the energy sector, renewable energy sector in Brazil. In municipal level, we have the IPTU, which is the urban property tax. We have some green IPTU programs, which provides discounts for sustainable practice in this municipal level. Uh, but wh- but beside the current regime, we are facing Brazil right now a tax reform, consumption tax reform. We already had a constitutional amendment approved in 2023. We have a regulation, the complementary law 214 approved last year. So this tax reform is basically extinguishing some taxes, which are already mentioned, PIS, COFINS, ICMS, the ISS, which is the tax on services, the IPI, which is the tax on industrialized products. All these five consumption taxes are being replaced by dual VAT, which is composed by the IBS, tax on which the acronym means tax on goods and services, and the CBS, which is the contribution on goods and services. So, w- considering this scenario, what are the main impacts of the tax reform to tax incentives in Brazil? Basically, some old specific PIS/COFINS IPI benefits will be phased out because in 2027, PIS/COFINS will be integrally extinguished. So, and the CBS will produce, how can I say, uh, will be valid from now on. And all the tax incentives that were not established by the constitutional amendment will be extinguished. So some specific regimes will be extinguished here, but RAID will be maintained, which is a good information for the renewable energy, which RAID I mentioned before is the special regime for, wait a second, just change it, the slide. Let me go back with just a second. Uh, wait a second. Oh, sorry. Uh,
No worries.
yeah, here. Just okay. RAID is the special regime for infrastructure development, and it will be maintained for capital goods, basically. We will have also with the tax reform preferential rates for biofuels, low carbon hydrogen, and we will have also the tax reform is also establishing an excise tax, and this excise tax will basically establish a higher taxation on fossil fuels. So here we have an indirect benefit for renewables in terms of comparison. And also the tax reform is establishing a broad non-cumulativeness, which will try to extinguish all tax residuals that we face in the current regime, basically. On state level, considering the current benefits that were established by the legislation, uh, the state ICMS exemptions will be phased out. So this is important to mention. They will be phased out by 2033. And also we will have how can I say, some benefits will be maintained. This is important because the benefit concerning the Convenio 16 2015, which is related to distributed generation, will be maintained, and also other benefits that will be extinguished will taxpayers will be able to access a specific fund, which is the tax benefits funds compensation, that was created to somehow compensate the loss of these tax incentives that existed prior to the tax reform. Also, a relevant point, all the green IPTU at municipal level benefits will not be affected because the property tax benefits were not discussed at this tax reform, so they will be maintained. A relevant point, all tax regimes will be reviewed during a quinquennial period. So this is a specific provision established by the tax reform. So if the government verifies that the tax regime or the tax benefit is not accomplishing its purpose, for example, stimulating the industry, generating jobs, generating wealth somehow, the government can basically extinguish the benefit. So this is a relevant point. And not only another relevant point that is important to mention is we have under discussion at the National Congress several additional legislative initiatives. For example, we have the green hydrogen project that is being discussed in the bill 2308 from 2023. This bill creates a special incentive regime for green hydrogen production with considering the tax reform scenario, which is relevant to say, establishing CBS, IBS exemptions reductions, also establishing import tax exemptions, accelerated depreciation, research and development tax credits. This is a relevant legislative initiative that is worth to mention here. Also, we have the offshore wind bill, which is being discussing the entire regulatory framework, considering licensing concessions, and the main intention is also to establish to enable future specific tax regimes such as on a specific extension of RADI. Biofuels, which is a very well developed industry in Brazil, have several discussions at the National Congress for advanced biofuels. For example, the SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuels. So we can see something being discussed, maybe being approved in the next during this year. We are following some bills there, and this can create also tax advantages considering the CBS IBS framework established by the tax reform scenario. And to conclude, let me, yeah, some key takeaways for the audience. Uh, Brazil, I think it's not something new, but everybody knows that the tax regime in Brazil is really complex, but right now is facing like how can I say a tax reform. So I think it will get better somehow for especially for the renewable energy sector. And another point that is worth to mention is because even with the tax reform, the prior tax policy scenario for renewables in Brazil somehow is supportive for the sector. Um, we will have like several relevant changes, like we will have a shift from specific exemptions to broader non-cumulativeness and targeted new incentives. We'll have the distribution generation benefits secured. We are already discussing new bills concerning green hydrogen and offshore wind. But one point is relevant, specifically for companies. Uh, any project, any company should have, for example, a specific tax plan, which should analyze, which should provide a customized analysis for the company because it's very specific. The tax regime in Brazil is complex, so this is a relevant point to mention. But despite that, I think it's unquestionable Brazil have a very relevant commitment to sustainable economic development. So it is clear when you see that in the tax policy regime for renewables in Brazil. Lucas, thank you once more for inviting me for the webinar, and I'm available for further questions.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Thank you very much to all panelists. We're unfortunately running out of time. I just wanted to finalize with a couple of comments on the presentations that we had today. I think that if the underlying theme of the four panelists' presentations is there's a lot of government discretion. In some cases, there's a lot of fragmentation as well between local government, state government, federal government, and their distinctive approaches to granting those incentives. And of course, if you are a multinational company operating in this space and investing in those countries, you should have a policy in place. You should have some sort of planning structure to be able to understand the history of those incentives in the country, how they operate on a day-to-day basis, and what's the future going to look like in the years to come. So I think that all of that needs to be considered by players in the region as well as by any investors. But all very interesting presentations, and I hope that the people in the Zoom as well as on YouTube are able to take away a lot of interesting lessons from those presentations as well. Once again, thank you very much, Roberto, Tomas, Daniela, and Alberto for your excellent presentations, and I hope that we have many more opportunities to have partnerships from LATPF and your organizations as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.